In September 1992, several hunters stumbled upon an abandoned bus in the Alaskan wilderness. On a camera beside him, dozens of selfies captured his face. Through fragments in his journal, they pieced together the story of his extraordinary life. This soul, forever frozen at 24, was Christopher Johnson McCandless. Chris was born into a wealthy family, yet his values were different. Despite the privilege, he remained detached from material wealth. He earned a full scholarship and graduated from Emory University. With his grades, Harvard Law was within reach. But instead of following that path, he gave away his $24,000 savings to a famine relief fund, cut off all documents that proved his identity, and set off on a boundless journey. In June 1990, he headed west, aiming for his sacred destination, Alaska. One night in the Arizona desert, he slept unaware of the seasonal floods. At midnight, a sudden flash flood struck, and through willpower and ingenuity he survived. To sever ties with his past, he removed his car license plate and burned his cash. He gave himself a new name, Alexander Supertramp. Chris lived in a simple tent, hitchhiking across the country. In the forests, he paused to quietly listen to nature. In August, he left Northern California and began the Pacific Crest Trail journey. At the same time, his parents realized they couldn't reach him and drove to Atlanta. They learned Chris had vacated his apartment 2 months earlier. The abandoned car showed no sign of struggle. His parents understood that Chris's disappearance was a choice. Chris's transformation was tied to his complicated family. His mother had entered his father's previous household, and Chris and his sister Corrine were born from an earlier relationship. Behind the seemingly perfect family were countless lies. Chris and Corrine's childhood memories included domestic violence from their father. He could not escape the label of illegitimate child. Yet he believed Alaska held the cure for his wounded heart. On the Pacific Crest Trail, Chris met a traveling couple, Rennie and Jan. They told him about Slab City, a place of simple living. Jan promised to give him a unique hat. But to Chris, every encounter was fleeting. After one joyful day, he quietly left the next morning. Chris continued his solo journey. An apple he found became his greatest pleasure at that moment. He said, "When you truly invest yourself, this apple is 10,000 times better than any other." He wasn't a superhero, he was Supertramp. By September, he entered South Dakota. To earn a living, he worked on a farm, driving a harvester. There he met the farmer Wayne. Wayne treated him like family and, knowing his dream of Alaska, helped him get a rifle and taught him hunting and meat preservation. But Wayne was soon arrested for illegal satellite TV. Before leaving, he reminded Chris to wait for spring before heading north. Chris ignored the advice and continued his journey. In Colorado, a kayak caught his eye one night, igniting his adventurous spirit. He hid his belongings under a bridge and asked about permits the next day. He learned it would take 12 years to get a permit. He used all his savings to buy the kayak and plunged into the Colorado River rapids. Chris met a drifting couple who admired him. They suggested a new route along the river to California Bay, over 300 kilometers. Before long, the patrol arrived and Chris had to leave. He drifted past Horseshoe Bend and Hoover Dam. By December 1990, he reached the Gulf of California, accompanied by whales and dolphins, and eventually entered Mexico via the Morelos Dam spillway. He carried his raft across the desert and hitchhiked to Gulf Bay. He lived in a cave for 36 days until a storm swept away his raft. He had to return north to the Mexican border. Without documents, he was blocked at the border. As night fell, he hopped a train back to California. At dawn, he jumped off before the station and slipped into an abandoned drainage pipe. In Los Angeles, he got a simple bed in a shelter. The streets suffocated him. Through restaurant windows, he saw well-dressed men, reflections of the life he was fleeing. He hopped another train to escape the concrete cage. This time he was caught by the rail patrol. They dragged him off the train and beat him harshly. They warned, "I'll never forget this face. If I see you again, it won't be a warning next time." Chris had no ID and admitted it. The patrol said this was his last chance. Chris returned to the bridge and dug up his buried belongings. To pursue Alaska, he had to temporarily reconcile with civilization. During Chris's disappearance, his parents' relationship shifted subtly. His mother saw scruffy wanderers on the street and feared it might be him. By December 1991, Chris reached the last free place in the U.S., Slab City. He met Rennie and Jan again and encountered a beautiful girl, Tracy. Tracy was forward, gentle, and passionate, fulfilling youthful fantasies of first love. They walked together, listening to stories of redemption from the elders. Tracy's gaze lingered on Chris, shy and sweet. At the foot of Old Tree Mountain, they pressed their hands into the earth. In the sunset they looked perfect together. It was Chris's warmest time. That night, Jan shared her past. Like Tracy, she had once hoped for a happy family with her first husband, but he left when her son was young. She raised her child alone, then met Rennie. Yet her teenage son ran away and never returned. Seeing Chris reminded her of her lost child. Days passed and Chris grew closer to Tracy. Yet he focused on fitness, ignoring romance. Rennie subtly remarked that children could be too harsh to parents. This struck Chris, but he remained determined to conquer Alaska. Jan drove him to Salton City but refused a farewell hug. She calmly handed him his promised hat and left. Chris set off for the Anza Borrego Desert wearing Jan's hat. In January 1992, he met an old man, Ron. Ron encouraged him to study or work for a meaningful life. Chris said he was already pursuing what mattered most. He told Ron to leave his comfort zone and embrace life. Chris said true happiness comes from new experiences, not just relationships. Ron realized Chris's wandering stemmed from his broken home. Chris said, "When you forgive, you love. When you love, God's light shines." On March 22nd, late at night, Ron heard noises outside. He had expected Chris's silent farewell. He quietly prepared outdoor gear. On the journey, both were silent. In Ron's tearful eyes, Chris faded into the distance. By April 1992, Chris reached the Yukon in Canada. 2 days later, he arrived in Fairbanks. After 2 years, he finally reached Alaska. He prepared supplies and guides on flora and fauna. Then he stepped into his sacred wilderness. After a few days, he found an abandoned bus on Route 142. He named it Magic Bus. Inside were a mattress, stove, and fire-starting tools. He asked if anyone was around and guessed none. He cleaned the bus and it became his home. Chris aimed his rifle at a moose. But at the last moment, he realized he was aiming at a mother. He let it go. In the wilderness, he discovered the purest way of living. Each day, he felt his soul cleansed of worldly taint. Unaware, summer thawed the ice. Weeks passed and he lost weight, but his spirit grew strong. He killed a moose, then tried to smoke the meat as taught on the farm. It spoiled. He wrote, "I would rather not have killed that moose. One of my greatest tragedies." Supplies dwindled. He read Tolstoy, "I have experienced much and now I think higher." Chris realized true meaning. He wrote, "At dawn I need not hide in the unknown. But my heart is tied to home, naturally and sorrowfully. I carry these lessons each step steadier. All wounds heal and guide the way forward." After conquering Alaska, his soul revolution was complete. Returning to the familiar river, he found it swollen and violent. His path home was cut off. He tried to gauge the water, but a branch snapped. Christopher did something most of us never dare to do. He walked into the wilderness for us. He spent his life searching for an answer many people only wonder about. What he found was this: absolute freedom comes with absolute loneliness. He died in Alaska, alone inside an abandoned bus. No phone, no family, no one by his side. But in his final moments, he did not see regret. He saw himself crossing through time and embracing his parents. In that moment, he finally understood something. The thing he had spent years running from was the thing he wanted most. He once wrote, "Happiness is only real when shared." Those words appeared on the final pages of his journal. He found the answer, but by then he had run out of time. We still have ours. You do not need to burn your ID. You do not need to give away all your money. You do not need to disappear into the wilderness. But maybe you can call your parents. Maybe you can have a meal with a friend you have not spoken to in years. Maybe you can step outside one weekend and watch a sunrise you have been too busy to notice. The real wilderness is not in Alaska. It is inside your heart. And true freedom is not about escaping the world. It is about finding your place within it.